Jerusalema, ikhayalama, ikhayalami. Ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Jerusalema, ikhayalami.
Joy, it's our birthright. Its home is in the heart. It's contagious, isn't it? And powerful. The power of joy is well known to me from experiencing the results of joy. I've seen it transform entire rooms of people, unite diverse and divided groups, and heal lifelong wounds. It uplifts spirits and dissolves blocks and fears. I think most everyone would agree those are valuable attributes for creating a new and better world. I've taught a natural way of joyful movement I call World Dance for 40 years or so. In 1995, I was moved to take World Dance to the International Women's Forum in Beijing, China. I'd always had a dream of seeing the world dancing together in joy, as I knew there was no better solution for a troubled world. The forum created an instant town of 30,000 women from every part of the world. We gathered to talk, to share, and to listen.
They brought artificial food. They persuaded women that it was not good.
The list of workshops was a book. Some topics were hopeful, and some were very difficult to hear. The World Dance Workshop drew 100 women to move and dance in counterpoint to the weight of all those ideas and challenges. As we began, the energy started to lift, then it got higher and higher. Ecstatic describes it best. I thought the roof would have lifted by the time we ended, exhausted and altered. I didn't know then, but I've since learned what that powerful experience was about, and consequently why understanding the power of joy is so important.
Jerusalema, ikhayalami. Ilondoloze, uhambe nami.
The immensities of joy's power isn't generally recognized, which means a highly effective and feel-good form of transformation goes unused. Our world these days is less familiar with joy and more familiar with stress, fear, and suffering. That's because you can't feel joy and fear at the same time. They automatically cancel each other out. But fear can't even begin to light the candle, let alone hold it to the power of joy. So how can the power of joy best be understood to help our new world emerge? The answer to that question comes as three separate but linked concepts.
Jerusalema, ikhayalami.
The first concept to understand is that we live in a world of duality. Life is a constant dance of opposites. Day, night, good, bad, happy, sad. Our bodies, our well-being, the planet, and on up to the universe. Everything depends on the balancing interplay of feminine energy known as yin and masculine energy or yang. Just to be clear, yang doesn't refer to men and yin doesn't imply women. Yin and yang refer to the feminine and masculine qualities of this duality. Here are a few examples of that. Where yang is thinking, yin is feeling. Yang is competitive, yin is cooperative, and so on. Together, yin and yang create a moving, balanced whole, each one needing the other to exist. So, as you can see, this ancient model of wholeness is exquisitely balanced. However, for some reason, for several thousand years, we've adopted an imbalanced model with consequences you might expect from imbalance. There's destruction of our planet's ecosystems and life forms, violence against women, gender inequality, boys shamed for having feelings. The list is long. But where's the joy in that model? If we've learned anything from this system, it's that joy is scarce in an imbalanced world. To get back to balance, the adjustment required within ourselves and society is pretty obvious. Feminine values need to take up more space. Masculine values need to take up less space. And both need to be respected and accommodated equally. Fortunately, we're beginning to see that shift occur. It's now clear that outdated systems need a major overhaul to make way for the emerging balancing paradigm. Personal and social transformation is and will be part of the process. Remarkably, joy has the power to speed up that process, and what's more, in a joyful way. So a key to understanding how this high-powered heart emotion works is accepting feminine values as equally necessary as masculine values.
Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze.
The second concept to be understood is that we're currently living within two reality paradigms based on differing scientific lenses. For example, one scientific paradigm sees everything as separate, disconnected, and mechanically structured. It states that matter is the basis of everything in the universe. With this lens, if something can't be measured and proven to exist, it's not considered valid or scientific. The other scientific paradigm sees everything as an infinite, interconnected, inseparable whole, often referred to as a unified field. It states that energy, also known as vibration or frequency, is what our universe and everything in it, including us, actually is. One paradigm is exclusive, the other inclusive, and includes the exclusive science. Here's an example. The exclusive science uses only linear, rational, masculine thought processes, referred to as left brain thinking. The inclusive science uses both linear and non-linear, feminine, outside-the-box thinking for a balance of left and right brain function. The lens of separateness results in competition, me versus you, survival of the strongest or wealthiest, war, racism, and divisiveness. This competitive lens has led to most of the population feeling disempowered. As well, it's responsible for the destruction of our environment. High rates of poverty, a culture of stress, mental and physical health issues, and an epidemic of low self-worth, to name a few consequences. On the other hand, the lens of wholeness results in cooperation because what benefits one benefits all, and vice versa. So each person is empowered as an integral part of the unified field. The earth, too, is respected and honored as part of the whole and the source of life that it is. So what are the two sciences that create this contrast in thinking? You'll be familiar with Newtonian, Cartesian, or reductionist scientific thought, as it's been dominant for almost 400 years. It's considered the standard. This is textbook science, taught in schools and used widely. Less known but gaining ground is quantum physics, which expands scientific thinking beyond all familiar limits. It's been around for about 100 years and is called the new science, even though it corroborates ancient wisdom teachings from cultures around the world. Quantum physics is tricky to grasp, though. Scientists themselves are puzzled by their undeniable, repeatable results and strange conclusions. Even Einstein called quantum physics spooky, as it definitely doesn't fit within Newtonian parameters. So while many scientists have had their thinking stretched by new evidence, many others have chosen to stay within their standard boundaries. Which means that through one lens, joy is an intangible feminine emotion, and so it's dismissed as powerless. While through a quantum lens, joy's high frequency makes it an impactful, transformative power.
Before moving on to the third part of understanding how powerful joy is, it's important to point out that there is now a choice of lenses, and that this choice is critical for creating our world going forward. The third concept comes from the research of psychiatrist, scientist, and author David Hawkins. In his book, Power versus Force, he shows that joy is even more powerful than unconditional love. Hawkins worked with muscle testing, which is based on the phenomenon that a positive or truthful stimulus provokes a strong muscle response in test subjects, while a negative or false stimulus results in a weakening of the test muscle. For his research, Dr. Hawkins created an arbitrary scale of 1 to 1,000 as the parameter. He then worked with thousands of subjects, conducting millions of muscle tests. From the information he gathered over 20 years, Hawkins created a map of consciousness. It's become a valuable tool for explaining the qualities of being human, and as such is able to offer a clear understanding of the power of joy. The numbers on his scale relate to the calibration of the human state, starting at the lowest vibrational state, shame, calibrating at 20, and going to enlightened awareness at 1,000. The higher numbers indicate higher states of consciousness or frequency. Note the change at 200, courage. According to Hawkins' research, this is the dividing line between power and force. Everything above 200 is true power, and everything below is understood to be force. Hawkins explained the difference between power and force with the following comparisons. Force makes you go weak, while power makes you go strong. Force polarizes, power unifies. Force constantly consumes, taking away life and energy. Power energizes, supplies and supports, giving life and energy. Interestingly, force can bring satisfaction, but only power can bring joy. So the difference between power and force is impactful. But here's what's even more impactful. The map of consciousness is logarithmic. The measure of consciousness doesn't rise linearly, bit by bit, but exponentially, as does the influence or power of each level. In fact, the power of the highest consciousness levels is so great, their influential numbers are hard to grasp with linear Newtonian thinking. For instance, Hawkins has shown through muscle tests that one individual calibrating at 300 can counterbalance 90,000 individuals below 200, while one individual at 700 counterbalances 70 million individuals below 200. But put on your quantum caps, as amazingly, the influence goes even higher. Hawkins found the frequency of one enlightened being at 1,000, like a Buddha or Jesus, counterbalances the collective negativity of all humanity. So using that scale, one individual living at joy at 540 counterbalances at least 1 million individuals below 200. With that level of influence, joy is clearly a powerful state of being. But until Hawkins' explanation of power, joy was regarded as nothing more than a pleasurable emotion. Just to clarify here, a person who calibrates at 540 would be in a constant state of joy, which is rare. But if more people focus on including more joyous experiences in their lives, the consciousness on the planet will be raised to more positive levels sooner. As well as increasing personal joy in your life, an even greater power is possible, collective joy. That's a term coined by writer and journalist Barbara Ehrenreich in her book, Dancing in the Streets, A History of Collective Joy. According to her research, collective joy is a biotechnology for binding groups together and has been used as such throughout history. It's collective power, think joy amplified. Ehrenreich claims that joy is a vital tactic for personal and group resilience, and also a tool for political resistance to any agenda that uses mass fear to divide and disempower. This was recently proven true, as many protests against racism in the United States broke out in dance. diffusing tension. In Atlanta, Georgia, members of the National Guard joined in the dancing with the protesters, illustrating joy's power to unify. So along with personal joy, collective joy can raise the consciousness of humanity beyond fear, division, and suffering. There are other ways to collective joy, but dance is one of the fastest and surest ways that I know or have witnessed. Which takes us back to the Women's Forum in China and that room full of 100 women dancing in full joy. Now it's clear to me, we were counterbalancing the numerous stories of despair that were being told, heard, and held. And within the framework of quantum physics, the entire Women's Forum got a high-frequency boost. That's the power of joy. It's understandable that joy hasn't been seen as powerful and important. The imbalance of masculine-feminine values has drained humanity's joy for millennia. The scientific lens that brings joy's frequency into focus is outside the box of standard thinking. And only recently has joy been shown to be a high level of consciousness. But now, knowing the power of joy, those of us who can consciously choose it will be making our lives and the world we're all creating more balanced, joyful, and so much better for everyone.
Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, zuhambe nami. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami